Final Fantasy VI is my favorite Final Fantasy because I think, I don't know, it was very like simple. It still had like mythical elements and stuff, but it was very like straightforward. It was like there's magic and there's technology and then there's a bad guy and there's this good guy and then oh there's this girl and she's half magic, half person, so she's split between worlds and it's like oh wow this is neat. And then all these different characters kind of had these different views on like what was going on. And
I have a theory. That no, I'm not gonna say it.
Would you say a game theory? I know.
So I have a theory that the first Final Fantasy game that people play tends to be their favorite Final Fantasy game. So for me, my first Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy X, and then 7, and then 6. And so, as a result, Final Fantasy X is my favorite. And I know it gets a lot of hate, and I'll probably get a lot of hate in the comments for that. So one day maybe I'll have to defend it.
Final Fantasy VI is the greatest video game ever made. Hands down. There is no other game better than it, for it is the best.
My favorite Final Fantasy is 7. Overhyped, whatever. It's definitely 7. It was the Final Fantasy that got me into Final Fantasies. I had played the ones prior after playing 7. 7 was the one that pulled me in. I was captivated by the story, by the characters, just by the gameplay elements, like materia, stuff like that. It was fascinating to me, so it was definitely 7.
Hello, my name is Jirard Dragon Rider Khalil, but most of you on YouTube know me as the Completionist. Welcome back to week 2 of our in-depth review of the entire Final Fantasy VII franchise. Last week, we set the stage, and now we move on to Disc 1. While there was a lot of information, we're going to move forward with what we've explained in depth, keeping that information in mind. So, before we begin, be sure you checked out last week's prologue video, or else you might get a bit lost. We've also got a few great guests to come with us on this journey for the next 3 videos, so with that in mind, let's get started with Disc 1.
The game opens with a beautiful cutscene that introduces you to the ugly steampunk world of Midgar.
Hey, wait a second!
What?
Stop the video, run it back! Is that the poster for My Bloody Valentine's album Loveless?
I don't quite see what you're talking
Yeah, it is, there it is! I'm an Easter egg finder, I'm the Easter Bunny. Seriously though, everyone check out Loveless. It's an incredible record, really sets the tone for the 90s.
Right. Anyway, the game begins with Cloud joining Barret and the rest of Avalanche on a mission to destroy Midgar's Mako Reactor number 1. This is probably one of the cooler ways to start a game. On a train with heist and battle music, the attack is successful and everyone escapes, but Cloud gets lost and accidentally runs into Aerith. They have a brief moment together, but then Shinra arrives to spoil the mood. He jumps into a passing train to escape, and luckily, the rest of Avalanche is waiting for him aboard. When they get back, Cloud wants to leave, but Tifa talks to him about their past for a while, and since that's what the game's about, he decides to stay. Cloud's so lost that he sets aside his pride just to feel like he belongs somewhere. It's like when it's your first day on a new job, and you try to participate in all the inside jokes, and everyone just ends up thinking you're weird.
The next day, Cloud, Tifa, and Barret attack the Sector 5 reactor. On the way out, they're stopped by the president of Shinra. During the ensuing fight, the bomb that Avalanche planted goes off, and Cloud is knocked off a bridge, falling down through the roof of a church in Sector 5. This is where Cloud and Aerith officially meet. This meeting is actually quite ironic later on when we get to Crisis Core, but we'll get to that eventually. Aerith constantly gets bothered by the Turks, and they show up at that precise moment. Aerith asks Cloud to be her bodyguard. Cloud agrees on the condition that they go on a date.
This is probably the most out-of-character thing that Cloud does, but it's also important to note how special Cloud thinks Aerith is. So, I'll allow it. Cloud helps her escape to Elmira's house. Cloud explains to Elmira and Aerith that he must try and find his friends Tifa and Barret. At Elmira's request, Cloud tries to leave in the middle of the evening, but Aerith heads him off. They give each other purpose, which is the first step towards forging an identity, and because of that, they decide to stick together. It's like finding out someone else likes the same nerdy stuff that you do. I had the same reaction when I found out Egoraptor liked Final Fantasy VII.
This game sucks. What's the worst thing about it? Everything. Best game ever. More like best lame ever. Oh!
Cloud and Aerith casually make their way to a park and spend some time together as they try to think of what to do. Suddenly, Cloud sees Tifa riding in the back of a carriage headed to Don Corneo's brothel. Don Corneo is one sick freak of a man that lives for himself, but he's a puppet for Shinra. Together, Aerith comes up with the idea to dress Cloud as a woman in order to rescue Tifa from the brothel, but not before Corneo reveals Shinra's insane plan to blow up the plate above Sector 7 while framing Avalanche. We're also briefly treated to a scene where Reeve, head of urban development for Shinra, opposes the plan, but that won't make any sense till later on. Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith head to the Sector 7 pillar, where Barret and Avalanche are in a firefight with Shinra soldiers. Tifa has Aerith go to 7th Heaven to save Marlene, while Tifa and Cloud go up to help Barret. Everyone but Barret is dead. The Turks also reveal they've kidnapped Aerith during this whole firefight. Aerith mentions that Marlene is safe. They fight the Turks at the top of the tower, but it's too late. The pillar is going to blow up. Tifa, Barret, and Cloud grab a construction ball and swing down.
Horrible! So much death and loss at the beginning of this game. I guess that's part of the whole theme thing, but wow! Does it ever get better?
Slowly but surely, Greg. Cloud, Barret, and Tifa head back to Aerith's house and find that Marlene is safe. But now, it's time to save Aerith. They climb the rugged walls of the slums and reach the top of the plate to Shinra HQ in order to save her. Now this is actually cool because you have the option of taking the stairs, or you can go guns a-blazing through the lobby up to the higher floors. While there, they rescue Nanaki, who now goes by Red 13. They discover that Aerith is being used to help the Shinra reveal the secrets of the ancient Cetra Promised Land. The group gets captured by the Turks, but shortly after, Sephiroth arrives. He plans to keep the Promised Land for himself and murders almost everyone in the building.
They did a lot of good, I don't want to say character development, but at least like getting you acquainted with like how cool Sephiroth is, like with the Midgar Zalem and like the big sword, and it's like, oh, who did this? Is this Sephiroth?
With the death of Shinra's president, his son Rufus is now in charge.
Wait, I thought that Sephiroth was dead!
Yes and no. More on that later.
Alright, but I don't get it. Sephiroth is locked away in the North Crater in the Mako deposit? How can he be doing this? Also, take a look at Genova's prison. It's been busted wide open. What the hell is going on?
We'll get to it, I promise. Anyway, in the ensuing chaos, Cloud and company are able to escape. They fight their way out and escape Midgar on an unfinished roadway and regroup in the nearby village of Kalm, where Cloud tells everyone the story of Nibelheim, substituting himself for Zack. Now remember, at this point, everyone thinks that Cloud's the hero, with no mention of Zack at all. Tifa agrees with this because she doesn't quite remember much of the event. The Nibelheim incident will be a reoccurring conversation if you haven't figured it out already, so be prepared to hear about it a lot.
We've had other characters like experience loss, but this is the first time that the main character has said like, this was the huge period of loss for me, and this is what changed this changed his life. Because he was, he was a soldier, and then this made him what he was. He took on like someone else's personality, he took on Zack's personality, and he was like, I'm gonna almost carry this mantle, and this was the change, the game wouldn't have happened without the Nibelheim incident,
And it's creepy and unsettling and weird, and then he like runs through the fire, which I'd seen like a million times before I'd actually played it, so I was like, oh, here's this scene, everybody loves it. Why isn't his hair catching on fire?
Thematically, the fact that before the game even starts, we are given a backstory of every character losing something. So Tifa loses her hometown, and Cloud loses his memory, and Sephiroth loses his life, and I guess Zack even loses his life. But since we already have this theme of loss going even into the game, it's interesting that the themes of the game were sort of created after the game existed.
One of the wildest things about it, and you don't really realize it until after the fact, but up till that point, you had never really seen Sephiroth. You'd heard about him, Cloud had talked about him, you'd seen kind of hints of him killing the Shinra president and things like that, but that's the moment where you first see him, and it's this grand entrance of like, look at the decimation that I've caused.
Now this is the first time in the game that everyone has a clear purpose. Between two evils, we have Sephiroth and Shinra. Based on what we saw, Sephiroth is definitely the worst of the two. The only one who seems to be along just for the ride is Red 13, as he states he only wants to be around until we reach Cosmo Canyon. They decide to chase Sephiroth and follow him to Junon Harbor. This is a moment where you can pick up the side character Yuffie. She's actually a bit of a hidden character. All you have to do is battle randomly in the forest near Junon Harbor. But be forewarned, do not check your inventory or look away when you find her, as Yuffie will steal from you depending on your responses.
Cloud periodically struggles with his memories, but he tends to shake it off. The group ends up together at the new president of Shinra's coronation ceremony. Rumor has it Sephiroth is aboard the boat that is sending off the new president. The group disguises themselves as workmen on the ship to find Sephiroth. Unluckily, they have to fight a piece of Jenova. They barely escape and follow Sephiroth to North Corel, where the survivors from Barrett's hometown now live. The group follows whispers of black materia and cloak-tattooed figures to the nearby Golden Saucer, where they run into the owner, Dio, and Kate Sith, a silly gray cat who rides a stuffed Moogle. Barrett becomes emotional about returning home and storms off. Kate Sith forces himself to join the party awkwardly, and it's weird that you just have to accept it. The group goes off to have fun playing a lot of the games and seeing the events in the Golden Saucer, but something tragic happens at the battle arena. It's discovered that a man with a gun for an arm has been killing people. The crew of the Golden Saucer assume it's Barrett and company, so they're all arrested and sent to Corel Prison.
Down in Corel Prison, they're reunited with Barrett, and it's revealed that his old friend Dine, who remember also has a gun for an arm, is actually the murderer. Barrett fights Dine and tells him Marlene is still alive. Dine gets upset at what he has become and kills himself. To clear their name, Cloud cons his way into the Chocobo races and wins everyone's freedom, as well as a little buggy to help them get around. They make their way to Cosmo Canyon, where Red 13 tells his whole story and introduces everyone to Bugenhagen, a scientist he considers to be his grandfather. Bugenhagen tells everyone about the live stream and lets Aerith know that she is the last Cetra alive. Everyone is upset, lost, and at odds with their own individual pasts. So, Bugenhagen sends them all to the Cave of Gi, where Red 13 learns the truth about his father and resolves to help save the world. The group, with their newfound purpose, heads to Nibelheim.
Nibelheim? Oh no! That's where all the devastation happened, where the story began! How can our heroes possibly handle such a... Oh, it's exactly the same.
I didn't really see what the appeal of him was. You know, I'm like, oh, here's this guy, he's kind of strange. This whole time I expected him to be kind of like the smooth operator who's like strategically taking down everyone. To me, I was much more invested in the like anti-Shinra campaign and taking down this big corporation that was ruling the world, this and that. But that incident of burning down the town and just utterly decimating everyone who lived there, that was the moment where, and seeing Sephiroth like walk through the flames in the cutscene, like that was the moment that I saw what made this guy such a big deal.
The locations were really stood out to me, like that like really low wide angle of like the stairs leading up to Jenova, like I remember that really well. And it just felt intense. It was cool. It was probably the music. The music's really good in that game.
Shivers, but like excitement shivers, you know? Like he was so cool. Even though he'd done something, so you were like 12, I was 12 when I was playing this game, and I was like, this guy is just, how am I supposed to fight this guy? He is ridiculous. And I remember I had a save game and I kept reloading the save game just to watch the clip again and again and again, because like the graphics weren't that great in Final Fantasy VII, but this particular cinematic was just, it was there for all to see, and it was just like, yeah, just walks through the flames. I remember it perfectly.
Immediately, One Winged Angel comes to mind. That's I think what everyone would say. I would say confused and perhaps used.
Strangely, no one in Nibelheim acknowledges that anything ever happened there. However, Sephiroth is in the mansion, and the black cloaked figures on the outside of town, they're muttering the word reunion. Sephiroth tells Cloud he has no right to join him for the reunion, and Cloud begins to realize that Jenova might not be an ancient after all. The reason why Sephiroth says this is because Jenova cells were injected into Cloud when he was held captive, but Cloud was considered a failure. There is another missable character here, our friend Vincent Valentine, the former Turk. He's still sleeping in the Shinra mansion. Getting him opens up many more aspects of the story, and after our prologue video, who wouldn't want Vincent in our party? After collecting Vincent, the group heads up through Mount Nibble to Rocket Town.
Rocket Town? What a hilarious name! Hey, there's a giant rocket in our town. What do we call it? Well, let's call it Rocket Town. Done. Let's go to lunch. You want sandwiches? Ice cream sandwiches. It's ice cream lunch.
They meet the foul-mouthed, hot-headed Sid, a pilot with dreams of going to space. Shinra shows up demanding that they take Sid's only plane, the tiny Bronco. Shinra already confiscated the Highwind, which was Sid's airship, and this is just another thing they need in order to follow Sephiroth and our crew. They all climb in the tiny Bronco together and escape. Sid forcefully goes with his ship, and the Shinra shoots it down. The tiny Bronco then becomes our car boat. Angry at Shinra, Sid joins the gang. He tells you how he used to work for the now abandoned Shinra space program, and that Rufus was chasing Sephiroth to the Temple of the Ancients to get the Black Materia. Sid's mean spirit comes from the loss of his dream. He was going to become the first person who went into space. The Shinra-funded space program guaranteed his dream to be a reality, but on the day of launch, his assistant Shara got stuck in one of the compartments. If Sid had launched the rocket, he would have killed her, so he pulled the plug on the launch, which in turn cost Shinra money, and they backed out of the program. With our brand new water car boat, we have the ability to explore, and the new area we can explore aside from our main destination is Wutai, Yuffie's hometown. As we make our way to Wutai, Yuffie's secret plan to steal all of our materia comes into fruition. Our new goal is to get all of our materia back, while avoiding the Turks and the rest of the Shinra soldiers. We head to Wutai and go on a wild goose chase until Yuffie gets kidnapped by Don Corneo, our sleazy villain from the brothel Midgar. Now this is actually really cool because we get to team up with the Turks to take down Don Corneo, as Corneo has taken one of their own. Shortly afterward, Yuffie returns all of our materia, and we can move back to our main quest. But a surprisingly endearing fact we learn from this quest is actually how Yuffie became a thief to steal materia. It's because of the conflict that once existed in Wutai. Wutai was at war with Shinra for quite some time, and Shinra won, expunging the spirit of Wutai. Yuffie and her family's spirit was in turn also crushed. Another example of loss not only for Yuffie, but for the entirety of Wutai. After hearing that the temple's keystone was sold to Dio over at the Golden Saucer, they head over there to get it from him. Dio happily hands it over after a round in the battle arena, but the gondola vehicle is busted for the night. They decide to spend the night at the inn. Aerith finally cashes in on the date she owes Cloud, but since he's being so quiet, Cloud reminds Aerith of Zack. This is actually a fun moment because depending on how you interact with Barret, Tifa, and Aerith throughout the game, you can actually end up on a date with either of the three. Regardless of which date you go on, Cait Sith turns out to be a remote-controlled Shinra spy. Yet another instance of incorrect identity, and he steals the keystone for Rufus. Cait Sith shows his true colors by showing the group that he has Marlene hostage, and that they must take him along with them, or else.
What a jerk!
Oh, trust me, his story's even weirder than you think. They go to the Temple of the Ancients where they find Sephiroth, and he explains his plan on becoming a god to them. After getting the info he needs, Sephiroth disappears. The group realizes that the only way to keep the Black Materia magic out of Sephiroth's hands is to shrink the temple, but it will crush everyone still inside. Cait Sith decides to sacrifice his giant stuffed body to do it, redeeming himself. Sephiroth once again appears and uses Cloud's Genova cells to control him physically and breaks him into two different versions of himself, one of which hands over the Black Materia. Now this is actually awesome to play because no matter what you do, you cannot stop yourself from giving the Black Materia to Sephiroth. Sephiroth leaves, Cloud passes out, and the rest of the group shows up with another model of Cait Sith in tow.
So Cait Sith is just invincible? What is he? What sort of witchcraft created him?
While Cloud is knocked out, he has a dream where Aerith tells him she's going to the City of Ancients to handle Sephiroth without them. He wakes up inside of an inn in Gungaga. Aerith is gone, and he tells everyone what he saw. Things are looking pretty good, there might be a chance for redemption. They fight through the sleeping forest and find their way to the City of the Ancients, where Aerith is kneeling in prayer by a standing pool of water. As Cloud approaches the altar, Sephiroth begins toying with Cloud like a puppet. He pulls out his Buster Sword and he's about to stab Aerith. This is so frightening. In this moment, we battle with the eternal struggle and question of, is Cloud actually going to kill Aerith? But then, Sephiroth drops out of nowhere, and in one of the most famous surprise twists in the history of gaming, he kills Aerith where she stands. Aerith was given a white materia when she was a young girl, and throughout the journey, she references that it has no magical powers. Upon her death, the materia falls out of her hair and skips across the water gently, sinking to the bottom.
The impetus, the thing that you as the player feel, is Aerith's death at the end of Disc 1. Like, that's the big thing that everyone notes as their personal moment of loss as a player. And I think that is what stuck with more people than anything else in the game.
Why didn't you use Phoenix Down? I'm out. Yo, I win the interview.
You know, I had never really played a game where one of the main characters or one of the main party members just dies in the middle of the game. It was so shocking to me. I know that was kind of a trope of Final Fantasy games before it, but Final Fantasy X, that doesn't happen, which was the only one that I had played before. And so I didn't know that this was kind of something that Final Fantasy games were kind of relatively known for, or whatever. And I think most people who came into the series at 7 or later found this out for the first time in that moment.
Oh, Aerith died. It was so sad. I didn't even care. I was actually really frustrated with her because right before that, you fight the wall, I think, right? And they made you use her. And I was like, F this shit. I don't even use Aerith. And then she died, and then I was like, I don't care. And then I like Tifa better anyway, so I don't know. It wasn't a big deal to me.
Shock. This was the first time I'd ever seen someone die in a computer game and not come back to life. You know, this was I mean, you not like, obviously you see people die, but in the sense that this was a character that you invested in and you leveled up and you had her in your party and you became attached to that character and then it was ripped from you. This was the first time that happened to me, and I think for a lot of people, it was the first time it happened to them too. So it was a shock. I think part of you knew she was going to die, but I don't think anyone expected, or I didn't expect, that she would be gone for good, like gone.
You know, we're untouchable. You know, we grew up with like Link and Mario and stuff, and those guys don't die. I mean, unless you suck, but you know, in RPGs, especially Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, like, you know, I'm trying to think of what other, Earthbound and stuff, like people don't die. It's a video game, like you're the heroes, you're gonna win the day. But here it is, this like, just out of nowhere, this murder scene. And it lets you know that you're not safe. Like anyone can go at any time.
Needless to say, Cloud is devastated, and as Sephiroth casually leaves for the Promised Land, the group is faced with yet another piece of Jenova.
Wait a second. I think I just figured this out. We're not actually hunting Sephiroth at all.
Oh, awesome, yes! I think Greg gets it exactly!
Every time we catch up with Sephiroth, what happens? We fight a piece of Jenova. Jenova for many years disguised herself as a Cetra, right? That means that Jenova is a shapeshifter. Sephiroth didn't actually kill Aerith. Jenova shapeshifted into Sephiroth. The Sephiroth who is in the Mako deposit in the North Crater is the real one, but because he was the only one born with Jenova cells, he has the ability to control Jenova. So it was Sephiroth's will that killed Aerith, but not physically Sephiroth.
Which correlates into our theme of loss and identity. Oh, snap! Just when everything was looking up, Cloud loses what's most important to him. Sephiroth has him doubting everything he thinks and knows about himself, and he feels like he's just a pawn in some larger game he doesn't really understand. End of Disc 1. So why spend all this time on Final Fantasy VII? For a fan of the game, the short answer might be, oh, because it's freaking Final Fantasy VII, and sometimes that might even be enough. But for me, the answer is a bit different. I want to talk about this extensively because the themes of loss and personal identity are so universal not only to the characters in this game, but also to all of us as humans. We've all wondered where we fit in the world. We've all lost somebody or something we care about. That's why Aerith's death is special. It's not because you lose a party member. Plenty of video game characters die. Aerith is special because in such a big game, it comes at the end of the first disc. It comes early on because of Sakaguchi's original intention. Aerith dies because as you play the game, it shows you how to move on.